You are now entering the horror sanctum.
Hello, and welcome back to the Horror Sanctum podcast. I'm Jay with John, Kellen, and TJ. And we're also joined this week by Emmy Award winning makeup artist, Ben Rittenhouse. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Thanks for taking some time with us. Along with makeup, you also deal with wardrobe and special effects. You won the Emmy for the HBO Max limited series, The Pacific, which was fantastic. But you've also worked on numerous other films and series, including Kill Bill, The Mist, The Chronicles of Narnia, which I just bought all three brand new at Goodwill this past weekend.
Sweet.
Blade, Hannibal, and that's just to name a few. But today, you joined us to chat about a movie of your choosing, and it's one I don't know if our listeners has heard of. It's directed by Toby Hooper from 1974, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes.
Now, if you've never heard of this movie, you've never seen it, the fuck, go watch it.
If you haven't heard of this movie, go fuck yourself.
That's a real.
Exactly. Right. So let's jump in and just start with you, Ben. Like, tell us why this was. I don't even think usually we ask people for like three choices, but I think you just said Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and that's what we went with.
So TJ asked me, he's like, 3 movies you want to talk about, and then I just listed Texas Chainsaw, Texas Chainsaw, Texas Chainsaw.
So I was like, I guess we have a winner. We haven't done that one yet, so let's run with it.
Well,
and honestly, we have a side story, like I've already hinted at, that has happened to us recently, and it made us want to talk about it more. So, anyways, so
hold on.
There you go. You froze for a second at your back. So
something weird.
Tell us why your 3 choices were the same film and what this film means to you.
So the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, to me, I saw it as a kid. I was probably, 10 or 11. And I'd seen other horror movies, I'd seen, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th. I saw them all. I had pretty cruisy parents who kind of, if I liked something, they'd let me watch it. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the first movie that literally scared, not literally, but scared the shit out of me. Because it's not about some supernatural thing. It's about rural people doing horrible things. And I grew up in a rural area, and I knew that there were creepy ass people around me, and just this weird family that there were cannibals and they were just murderous. All they had in mind was just murder. That's all it was, like murder and eating individuals. And it just it freaked the people I was around, oh shit, this could be real. It's a very real and very tangible. There's no crazy phenomenon. It's not a monster. It's not this. It's not that. These could potentially be my neighbors, which really creeped me out so much. And just the way it was shot for no money. And the conditions that they shot it under, it was a hot set, literally a hot set, 105 degrees outside. So inside, during the dinner scene, it was 115. So these people are you can feel it. You can feel it when you watch. You can feel their discomfort, and it just adds to everything. To me, it is the ultimate, it started a generation of slasher movies. There was nothing like it before.
And it's not really super big on special effects. So
No. Honestly, quite honestly, the special effects in Chainsaw Massacre are not that good.
Yeah.
Like the grandpa makeup is awful. It's not very good. It looks like a guy in a rubber mask.
Yeah.
But I still, because of the terror in that scene, it suspended my disbelief. Like I didn't care that it was a bad makeup, and I still don't. I watched it last night just to kind of like, refresh myself, because I know we were talking about it, but it's a bad makeup. It's not good. It's not, there's nothing great about it, but the terror in that room was so palpable that like I just didn't care that it was bad. It still freaked me out, and that to me, and they say that like, Chainsaw started a new realm of filmmaking. It really did. It like, and I love that most of the horror happens during the stark light of the day. It's a hot day. It's like you can tell it's hot. Like all of the horror happens during the daytime, and you don't see that much, in horror films for the horror to happen during broad daylight. Like
Yeah, that's definitely something that's creepy. Like you, we grew up in rural areas too. I assume all of us did. I'm from Trousdale County, which is super small, and I've always resonated with movies where it's not necessarily supernatural, it's not demonic, it's not a mask wielding maniac, but it's more these things that could really happen. Like I think one of the scariest movies I've seen in my lifetime is the original Strangers, just because it's so
sure, yeah,
real. And that whole line where why are you doing this, like because you were home. And, it's that simple.
Yeah.
Like there's times when I'm in bed and I hear something, I shoot up, like someone's trying to get in here and murder me, because it happens all the time. And honestly, we're lucky that hasn't happened to us or something, someone we know, because it is real and it does happen. That's what makes movies like this scarier, in my opinion, for sure.
I grew up 30 minutes from where they filmed Deliverance, so that's where I'm from.
Oh, sweet. Squeal like a pig.
Yeah. I know those people.
Yeah. It's creepy, weird shit, man. Like the human, like, so as a kid, I was a huge monster fan. Like I loved Godzilla. That's really kind of what
You're repping your famous Monsters of Filmland shirt. Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, I just got it at Monsterpalooza, and all those famous monsters and like all the monsters. And then when you grow up, you're like, hey, wait, well, what are the real monsters? And then you start like you go down a rabbit hole of like serial killers. The Ted Bundys, the Ed Kempers, and then you're like, oh shit, there are real monsters, and they could be your neighbor. And that's what I love so much about Chainsaw. It's like it's just this rural family, like that eats people, and like travelers, they take their cars and they hide them, like, and they brutalize and then eat them, which is it's scary. It's scarier than Godzilla, it's scarier than King Kong, it's scarier than the Mummy or Frankenstein's monster. Like it is real, and that's what I really love about Chainsaw. The other thing I love is there's no blood in Chainsaw Massacre. Like when you think about it in your head, you're like, oh, this is the bloodiest movie ever. And then when you watch it, like, no, there's like 2 or 3 scenes with blood and gore. And I've done my fair share of blood spurting in films, and it has never affected me the way that Chainsaw has affected me. It's all the director Toby Hooper, which was his first film. This was his first film out of the gate, was Chainsaw Massacre, other than Egghead, I think, or Eggman. I can't remember the name of it, but
I think it's Egghead. Yeah,
it's like which is cool, but it had it. It's amazing to me that your first stroke. It's honestly the Citizen Kane of horror films, because everything changed after Chainsaw Massacre. No one did the same kind of horror movie after that.
And because of the budget, because of they were shooting on a shoestring, they filmed it like a documentary because that's all they had the equipment and the ability really to do. And they had these locales. They couldn't air condition them. It looked hot and sticky because they were all about to die of heat stroke and like 100-degree plus Texas sun. And it all just adds to the atmosphere. You can smell this movie.
It's palpable when exactly 100%. And the other thing I love is this was the first movie that lied to the audience. When the trailer rolls up, when they're like, "Oh, this is based on action." No, it wasn't.
I mean, it's very loosely based on the Ed Gein, the monster Plainfield, but so was Psycho and so many other things.
So was Psycho, and so were so many other things, and so many other things after that. But they said this is based on a truth, a reality. So for the audience, then that takes them out of like, oh, it's a movie. No, this is a documentary about horrible things that happen. And I think that is truly brilliant to lie to the audience. Like,
and then 25 years later, Blair Witch did the exact same thing.
Well, even before that, the Coen brothers did that with Fargo. They said that Fargo was based on actual true events, right, which it was not. It was not based on actual true events. They took a nod from Tobe Hooper to just you were telling stories. You don't have to be honest. You don't have to anything that engages your audience even more like that. I don't know. I just think that's a stroke of true brilliance to tell the audience that this was real. Just imagine 1973 being at a drive-in and then that rolls up. Like, what?
And John Larroquette's deadly serious voice.
Exactly. Yeah. The guy from Night Court later on, which my buddy just told me, like, oh, that's the guy from Night Court. I was like, holy shit, it is the guy from Night Court. But it is so, like, everything. The first kill is for me, is the best kill in cinema history. Like when he just whacks him in the head and then he flops around on the ground, like that.
It's very realistic.
That it's insane. It's not just, it's real. Like when you see it, you're like, oh shit. And then Leatherface gets all upset because they just keep coming to him. Like he's like excited, but also concerned. Like, where are they coming from? They just keep running into my house and I kill them and I got to throw them in the freezer. I got to put them on a meat hook. Like, just, it was a smorgasbord for Leatherface.
The victim of the movie, Leatherface. He's the real victim of the film.
He's just trying to make his barbecue, man.
Well, he had a problem of overabundance. Like, oh my God, what do? I got to put it in the freezer. I got to cut it up. I got to make all this sausage.
Well, at least he didn't let the meat spoil.
Exactly. It's a good problem to have, though. You know what I mean? Like, abundance it's a great problem to have.
So when did you first watch this movie, Ben?
In probably 1980, probably 1987.
Okay.
1988, maybe. I don't know, I was a kid. And, like I watched it on a VHS copy.
And you watched this one before 2 that come out in 86.
Yeah. I watched it before 2. And then when I watched 2, it freaked me out as well. But now when I watch 2, it almost seems like it's a parody almost of a horror movie.
And also directed by Tobe Hooper.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so silly, but it's awesomely silly. It's very campy and goofy and like it's so weird. I love it though. I love Chop Top. Like, I love that whole character. I love, how we get to know the family a bit more. But the mystique of the first one is just like you don't know, and you're left with no answers. Like, there's a part of me that's I've been thinking about this quite a bit. At the end of the movie, where there's the truck driver, and like Sally jumps into his car, his semi, and then she runs away. Like, I want to find out what the rest of that guy's day was like.
Right.
Like,
it's kind of like
Black Maria.
Well, it's kind of like, in the House of a Thousand Corpses, that Rob Zombie did kind of a nod to that when the girl gets in the truck that Sid Haig just happens to be driving, right? And then you later find out he's part of their whole family. So I always kind of thought, like, in an alternate universe, probably just another member of their family picked her up, and it didn't end well for her.
Well, that's kind of exactly, and that's what's great about like 70s film is they leave you hanging. You don't, like, it's not wrapped up in a tight little bow. It is like, oh, like, here's the end of the movie. There's no conclusion. You get to decide. And I love that about 70s film. Like, 70s filmmaking to me is, well, not just to me, but like it is, what do they call it? The silver, or I can't remember. I can't remember what era it is of filmmaking, but it is the quintessential era of filmmaking where, artists were running the studios. So they let films, like Cuckoo's Nest and like any 70s film happen because they're not worried about money. They're worried about making art.
And I mean, what was going on in the world? I mean, Vietnam, you had the Nixon era, you had a lot of, shitty stuff going on that made the artist have a pessimistic kind of worldview, and they were willing to put that on film.
Well, yeah. I mean, Vietnam, number one. And then you had all these like crazy secular groups in the US like causing havoc. And it really well, the Manson family, number one, like that ended, the hippie generation. It all that ended really poorly with all these crazy hippie kids killing people, and then that changed perspective. And I think that is another reason why Chainsaw Massacre is so, like, it is such a good film, and critics across the board, this is up in their top 10, not just as horror films, but as films that have ever been made. Like, Chainsaw Massacre is up there with Citizen Kane because it changed something. Everyone after that movie wanted to do that movie.
And it also was one of the first films to usher in the 70s, a movement called cinema verite, which is basically what would become decades later reality television.
Yeah, it was like a mockumentary, but it wasn't presented that way, right? It was not presented as a documentary. At the beginning, it said, "Oh, these are true accounts," but it's really just a low budget. Like, Tobe Hooper was a film student in Austin, and like, he wasn't trying to make a documentary. It's just what he had available to him. The technology made it look like it was a documentary. It was, like, there isn't, in that film, there's not someone holding a camera. The fourth wall isn't broken. It's not like Blair Witch, where, like, oh, the people with the cameras are also the victims. It was shot, you know what I mean? Like, but it gave that feel because they had no money. It's zero money.
So when I first saw this film, I had heard the legend of it long before, and I first heard the legend of it watching Monster Vision in the mid '90s
Sure.
on TNT with
Yeah.
Joe Bob Briggs. He would talk about it, but
Yeah.
for years and years they would not show this film, even though it's less bloody than a lot of films they show on basic cable. So
Yeah.
I eventually, when I was like 13, 14, rented it from my local video store on VHS, which is all they had,
Sweet. Yeah.
and watched it
Absolutely.
with my cousin. And we were like, what is this movie? Is this even a movie? Are we supposed to be like watching this? It wasn't at all what we thought it was going to be. Like, it just made you uncomfortable.
Right.
But it didn't have like the blood and the gore. And I figured people were getting,
No.
hacked up with chainsaws and stuff, but it wasn't at all what we thought it was.
Sure. Yeah.
It would take me years to really, and re-watches to really appreciate it for what it was and what it did historically that had never been done. And I think, in terms of making a gritty exploitation horror, low budget, like put you in the scene and just make you uncomfortable, I think it does that probably better than any other horror film I've seen.
Oh, absolutely. And the great thing is, man, like currently, like I love, one of my favorite things right now is to work on indie horror movies, because you have to, like, it's problem solving. You have to come up with, there's no CG, there's no this, there's no that. It is, what can you put in the lens, in the camera? And I absolutely love that. Like, I am an indie film fan through and through. Like, big blockbusters, yeah, sure, I like them, but do I really love them? It depends on what we're talking about. But like, I love working on something where they're like, you have this much and we want this much.
Yeah.
What can you do? And then it stimulates my brain to think, like, well, what can I do? How I love to problem solve. And in my industry, being a special effects makeup artist, that's all I do is problem solve. That's all any of us do. We're okay. You want a decapitated female, and you want to see you want to see the decapitation. You want to see this. You want to see that. Okay, this is how we can do it: A, B, and C. What if there's no money? Then you have to think about angles and shots and different shots. Like this, like Chainsaw to me is like, it's the essence of indie filmmaking, and it's the essence of thinking on your feet. I mean, I don't agree with a 26-hour day, which is what their last day was on set. Like, that's ridiculous. But and that's the dinner scene, but it ended, like, it was beautiful.
It added
chaotic.
to the atmosphere, added to the scene, right?
Yeah.
And God willing, we'll have you working on some more indie horror films sooner than later, if we can get all the pieces in place.
Hey man, I'm currently working on a few right now, and absolutely come to me. My wife and I are developing our own, and it's definitely influenced by Chainsaw, because how could it not be? Like,
right.
That movie, honestly, like when you said, hey, pick 3 movies, and I was like, oh, I could do like From Beyond, like all these other horror films and sci-fi films that I love. But honestly, Chainsaw Massacre, man, like, it to me, it is disturbing, and when I watch it, it makes me feel uncomfortable still to this day. I don't like watching it, but I like watching it,
Yeah. John, what was your history with this movie?
I don't know the first time I saw it. I probably watched the Terror in the Isles documentary, and I think I saw that on IFC, and I saw clips of the first one, and I know that I saw the second one first because I rented it, and
sure. Yeah.
a friend of mine watched it. The second is actually my favorite horror movie ever. It's not the best, but it's like it's
I
the
get
perfect.
you.
Yeah.
I love how long that bridge is.
Right.
When like it's an infinitely long bridge. It's like they're going across the Pacific for how long that kill takes. It's so great though.
Oh yeah, I did a lot of the filming locations last year, and I did some. The interesting thing is the house, the Quick Hill Roadhouse, is actually near a medical center now. So it's just a road. It's like a grassy part of a road, and then you see this medical center, kind of like St. Thomas or any hospital, and you see this main
Right.
street, and it's just the weirdest thing. Like you would never know where you are, you would never, but when you see it, you can kind of put it together in your mind. But it's crazy how different Austin is now. I actually
I'm
went.
sure. Yeah.
Oh, I actually went to the what is it, the cemetery, and when I went out there, they were actually burying somebody, and some guy in a cowboy hat was walking around, and it felt like the movie because it looked like in the movie in the beginning.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Was
oh
there
yeah,
a
go
drunk
ahead.
old man in a tire?
No, but it's funny you bring that up because that scene is really interesting now watching it because his dialogue, he's like talking about like, you laugh at an old man, but there's people who laugh and know better. It's kind of ominous because you
Yeah.
realize that this drunk guy probably has seen the hitchhiker rob these graves or whatever the hell they're doing. It's
And
just
make his sculptures. Yeah.
yeah, it's just such a, and I think, the actors in the movie, I think it feels like in the 70s, I would imagine a lot of people thought it was a snuff film because like it feels real. The actors are amateur. The people, the Jim Sidow is the cook. He's very like, he feels like a guy that you would meet at your gas station in the country.
Uh,
Like
and
it's,
I listen. I've got a place down here called Eddie's, and it is like it is. Yeah,
yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they were serving barbecue in that way.
Oh gosh. And it's really a weird thing because I've watched it so many times and I know it's not real, but I sometimes sit here and think with Toby Hooper because I'm very fascinated by Toby Hooper's life and like what he was
Sure.
like. And I don't know. I know this is a conspiracy theory, and I know a lot of people are just gonna be like, there's no way. It would honestly not surprise me if something like this did happen in Texas at one point and they covered it up. Because it's just so there's so many things about this movie that resonate because like the hitchhiker, I've had so many people who live there tell me they've met that type of person, like that personality.
Oh yeah. Well,
And
see, and that is the great thing about Toby Hooper, right? In this film, he makes it so real and so tangible that you're
mhm,
like, oh, guaranteed something happened like this. But he talks about like he was from Austin. He was a city kid.
mhm,
And whenever he went out rural, it scared the shit out of him. Like, so
mhm,
he was like a city kid. And whenever he went out to the country, it would always fuck him up. And he would get terrified. And I think also that has to do with a lot of like, like when I was a kid, there was like, urban legends of, like in my area, I grew up in a small town called Farmland, literally Farmland, Indiana. And we had this myth that there was a guy in a dog mask and a guy dressed as Jesus, and I can't remember what the other guy was. I think a clown, and they were all in a white panel van, and they would steal children.
mhm.
But I could see it happening. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because it's so fucking weird. Like it's beyond the pale because you can really it's tangible. You can see that yeah, these kind of people probably live among us.
Oh yeah, and like the cook, like when he's driving with the girl and he's hitting her with the rake and he's laughing, and then
Oh,
he's feeling bad and he's laughing. It's like it's kind of like a study on like the human psyche and how like madness. It really is a representation of life and how sometimes the dark recesses of the world, you don't know what's there. You don't know what you're going to
Well,
walk upon sometimes. Yeah.
well, and yeah, and also if you walk upon things with arrogance,
Hmm.
and you know what I mean, like when all those teenagers walked into that gas station, they they were very arrogant. They were very like, oh, we're just going here to get gas, and like very arrogant with the rural people. Like that was their number one mistake, because that set the chain of events. And I
Hmm.
gotta tell you, like, one of my favorite actors in this movie, uh not one of my favorite, but one of my favorite scenes is when he's talking to the kids in the van, saying like, oh, you shouldn't go mess around on other people's property. And
Hmm.
there's the guy that's washing the windows.
Yeah.
And every time he stops talking, he throws the thing in the bucket and walks away. But then he turns back around. The guy in the bucket starts washing again. And the POV of this man is he's sitting there staring at the sun before this van pulls up.
Yeah.
Like it's setting the scene for like rural weirdness and just like scary shit, like unhinged behavior.
Oh, yeah, that guy is great because he feels real. And the thing is, he probably was, if you look at him, he probably was like mentally handicapped in some way. So like
Potentially, yeah.
I wouldn't doubt that he was just a real guy. And there's so many stories about the behind the scenes of the making of. I know they're trying to make a movie that's kind of like The Disaster Artist, where it's like the making of TCM, making a movie basically.
Oh,
And
that'd be
it's
cool.
yeah, and a lot of people now, it really was kind of a exploitation thing in the way he filmed it, in that it was everybody was
It was
suffering.
cheap.
Yeah, everybody went through this experience. And could you get away with that now? Hell no. You could probably never get away with any of that now. But they
Yeah,
all kind
yes, you
of
could. By the way,
you think
you
you could
could.
get away with that? I don't know,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
I guess if it wasn't a big movie, I feel like if I feel like if it was a
Yeah,
big
and this
film,
wasn't. Oh, of
yeah,
course not. No, no, no. Not
yeah,
on a big film. Indie thing goes, man. Like for real.
yeah. I think it's because I've heard so many stories about the dinner scene, and I know Marilyn Burns had so many opinions on it. And at the end of the day, I think nothing malicious was done necessarily, but I think it's just this
Oh
idea
no.
that it was just like it was literal hell. Like you were talking about, it's hot, they're suffering, they're going through this experience, she's screaming. It
Yeah.
becomes a point where the acting probably in a way is real because you're just feeling this hell and you're just like, I just want to get this
Well,
day over with, right? So
yeah. And like they didn't wash any of the actors' clothing. So, I watched again, like I really wish there was a good documentary about Chainsaw, because there's not.
oh yeah.
There's like two that are like, eh, just like it doesn't really get into it. But
Yeah.
it's like Gunner talking about like he wore the same clothes for 6 weeks because they couldn't wash them because they thought it would change it.
Mm,
So, and then the hitchhiker, all of
mm,
them wore the same clothes for 6 weeks. So they're living in the smell, they're living in the heat, they're living in this rotten meat environment. Like it really did something. It like I would never want to be on a set like that, but
yeah.
yeah, I'm too far in my career to put myself there, but I could see being there and also wanting to be there,
Yeah. It's
Like,
kind of like I mean, in a weird way, it sounds odd, but it's like a religious experience. It's like you're going through something that's like a very visceral, real
well,
thing.
Suffering for the art, right?
Sure.
it's not necessarily suffering. It's like doing the art, period. Number
Yeah.
one, doing the art. And if this is what I have to do the art, I'm going to do the fucking art. And it doesn't matter if I'm sweating, like I am here, I'm present. I want this. This is my life, I want to work on films. Like, and if that's what, I mean, I did that back in the day. I worked on some real turds. Like, I've been in some shit situations, not quite as bad as Chainsaw Massacre, but I've been put in situations where there was no pay, promise of pay, no pay, still doing the work because I want to be there. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think it's I think for me it's like it's the best horror film ever made. I know I am curious to see what Kellen says because I know Kellen always has a hot take, and I've heard his hot takes. I really hope he doesn't poop on this movie.
I want to hear. I'm
Googling your stinkers. I'm Googling the movies you were just talking about. Stinkers. The Legend of Lake Hollow, that is on Tubi. I just saw that today in passing.
That is not a stinker.
That's not a stinker. That just came out this year. Anyways, sorry, Kellen.
Yeah. But that was one of those indie films where I was super excited to work on it because less is more.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
Is it my turn? Is that
there you are.
Circle joke over?
You're the guy that shits on everything, aren't you?
Yep. Well,
let's start here. I do own this movie in Steelbook. So,
and he hasn't opened it yet. That tells you something.
Why would I? It's streaming for free. Let's get the obligatory part out of the way. I absolutely understand this movie's place in the annals of horror history. I understand it being in the pantheon of Psycho and John Carpenter's Halloween and these classic movies that helped push along the horror genre.
Go on, shit on it. Let's hear it.
I'll show my paper real quick if you can read my very first note. Fuck Franklin. Yeah. What a useless
Franklin.
How have we not mentioned him up to this point?
Movie.
Listen, Franklin is great. Franklin is awesome because he's horrible. He's a little fucking garbage person. Like,
and that's what makes this movie borderline unwatchable is the fact that he exists. Is the fact that he exists in this movie. So
you're Franklin.
So I'm the villain of the group. My nickname is the smiley faced assassin. So get ready to take it in the rear. This movie I've seen twice now. I watched it again today. Just to refresh myself, and that was a horrible, horrible mistake because I realized that I didn't like it as much as I did the first time I watched it. This is such a meh,
Franklin.
It's such a meh film. The movie's in reverse. Film? The movie's in reverse.
Why is it a mad film? Oh, tell me.
I'll explain. The movie is shot in reverse. It makes no sense. The fact that they spent 26 hours filming the dinner scene. You didn't spend any time in the whole first 2/3 of the movie developing any character in a way where you might care that they die. The whole thing that you care about is that you hope that they do die.
Can I say something? It's a horror movie. You're not supposed to care about the fodder. The fodder is there to die. They are the
That's a dumb take. Sorry, I'm gonna have to call you. That's a dumb take. Every horror movie, the Halloween, you care about Jamie Lee Curtis. They develop her character. You care about the girl from Nightmare on Elm Street. You hope that she finds a way to persevere. Really. That's the biggest thing. This is David versus Goliath in horror films. You're supposed to have one person that you hope comes through in the end. That's the whole premise of the final girl. So you only have a final girl if you care about the girl, and nobody in this movie at any point in time do you care that anything happens to him. Sally is the worst possible final girl. She has the survival instincts of a squirrel on the interstate. I was hoping at some point that she would scream so hard that her vocal cords would explode, and that would be what kills her. But unfortunately, a truck driver stops by and happens to save her, who happens to have the only sense of anybody in this entire movie because he sees them coming at him with the chainsaw and is like, fuck that, and takes off running, which nobody else did.
No, he doesn't take off running.
Time.
He throws a pipe wrench at him and then runs. And I gotta tell you,
he ran and was gone. So he wasn't worried about looking back. He wasn't worried about coming back. He was like, oh, guy with a chainsaw, I'm out. See you guys later.
I want to see the rest of his day. I really do.
I could care
Like he
less.
drives away.
I
goes,
hope that his truck exploded
So-
and that it blew up that house
wait.
and that John wasn't able to visit it so that it wouldn't exist in reality.
So,
I have a feeling
what
it's
you're
very
saying-
urine soaked, whatever the rest of his day was.
So what you're
the
saying
whole-
is I love the films that I love, the horror movies that I love is no one escapes. Evil wins always. Like those are the things that I love. I do not love seeing like, oh look, it's what's her name and what's his name? They escape. Fuck that. I want to see everyone die, and I want to see the villainous, horrible people win. That's the kind of horror movies that I love.
And that's why the world's in the shit show that it is today, because people care more about the villains. Anyway,
what does
the
that
reason
mean?
this
What
movie's
does that
so
hold-
bad is
hold
they
on
spend
a
so
second.
much time on bad shots. Like the scene where they're at the dinner and it keeps zooming in on her. Nobody cares anymore. Why are we still focusing in on her? You have the grotesqueness of the grandfather sucking the blood on her finger with his shitty makeup. Like, what's the point of that? You're just trying to, at this point, you're just trying to be macabre for the sake of being macabre. Nothing in this movie is good enough to warrant it being considered an all-time classic, other than the fact that it pushed the
Fuck
genre
off.
forward. Like I said, I shouldn't have watched this movie again. The reason I watched it again was because, like, maybe I was a little judgmental the first time I watched it.
No,
Sometimes
yeah,
I'm in a
so
bad
what-
mood, but then I see it and I'm like, this movie's not worth watching.
What's great is I think you do this all the time, right? Like you're the protagonist. You hate everything.
I don't hate everything. There's been movies that we've watched that probably I should have hated and I really enjoyed. My problem with this is that everyone holds it in such high regard because it was the first.
Everyone does.
But the reason that they hold it in high regard is, again, and I've talked about this before, nostalgia. Other movies have come along since and have fleshed out or done a better job of what they were trying to do. I compare it to the original Evil Dead versus the Evil Dead 2. The original Evil Dead is not a great movie. It's a fun film.
Yeah,
it
it
has highlights where you watch it and you're like, I can see some moments in here where there's greatness that wants to come through. And what did they do?
Yeah.
They went back and made Evil Dead 2, and they took all of the parts of Evil Dead 1 that had so much promise and they built it into what I consider a 5-star horror film, Evil Dead 2. And anybody who says Evil Dead 1's great, you're lying to yourself. It's not, the acting's bad. Bruce Campbell himself has even said his acting was trash in that movie because he didn't know how to act. They were trying to make a movie that they wanted to make, and then they got a budget and finally made the movie they wanted to make. And that's what Texas Chainsaw Massacre is. They tried to make a movie they wanted to make, and other people have come along since and made a movie that was better than this movie.
Like what? What's better than
X?
Chainsaw?
I thought X was head and shoulders above what this movie is.
X is superb. It's beautiful.
Common
Pearl's
ground.
great.
Common ground. Let's
In my opinion, X took what Texas Chainsaw Massacre wanted to do and had the budget, the acting, and the storytelling to actually complete it.
X is more like
storytelling.
X is more like Eaten Alive, though. Really,
shit.
Eaten Alive is very similar to X in a way, but I do see TCM and X have similarities too. Yeah,
This is something that somebody wrote and didn't know how to really tell a story. They had an idea that they wanted to flesh out, and they ended up with an hour and 18 minutes of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It wasn't the movie that they should have made. It wasn't the movie that they could have made if they had a budget, if they had more time to actually film. And I've told John this. I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is fantastic. I think that movie, I would give that movie 3.5, borderline 4. I think it's.
I'd agree. I agree. I love TCM too. I agree.
It's better fleshed out because you have a little bit of the backstory for the first one with the family.
Oh my god!
But I mean, from the moment that Franklin opens his stupid mouth, do you know what? I realized this when I watched this today. The only reason Franklin can't walk isn't because he's paralyzed. He's too much of a pussy to try to walk because he's afraid he's going to fall down. Because that dude is scared of everything in this movie. The part that pisses me off the most, and then I'll let whoever wants to go next, is the fact that he spends
I want you to
so
talk
much time
more.
fighting with this
Please.
woman who just wants to check on her friends. No, don't give me the flashlight. I gotta keep the flashlight. I'm Franklin and I need the flashlight. Shut the fuck up, you fat piece of shit. Get out, give over the flashlight. Let this girl go check on her friends. Who cares if she dies? Why would you ruin her evening by having her push your fat lazy ass around? I guarantee Franklin could walk. He was just too much of a pussy to try, and I'm done.
He's done. Mic drop. We knew that was coming. We had the text conversation about X, and X is a fantastic movie. Everybody, you're listening, and Kellen just made you mad. We get it. His handle is at BAUB869 on Instagram. Please direct all inquiries and words towards him.
Did I adequately prepare you, Ben, for hot takes?
Kellen's my best friend. I defend him. I would defend him at all costs. I will say his take on this is partly because it was something you watched in the last 10 years, Kellen, or even less than that for the first time.
What was that?
When did you watch this movie for the first time? Recently, right?
Yeah, I think earlier this year. I think 3 months ago.
That's part of the
last
take.
year. Yeah,
that's part of that take too. It's the same thing with kids that are going to watch a new movie that comes out this weekend, as opposed to the original Halloween. They're going to grasp that more because that's what they saw first. For us, we all saw this a long time ago, and it's just resonated with. For Kellen, if you're seeing this for the first time, I get it. I get why you might not like it.
I think it's great. I think it makes me laugh so hard that Franklin is supposed to be horrible. That's the intent. Oh,
well, he was horrible at everything, and he was so bad that he went from being likably bad all the way back around to being somebody please shove the wheelchair up his ass, because that's the only way that any redemption to this movie is going to happen. He's such a useless character. He's such a worthless piece of crap that you know how bad you have to do, how bad of a job you have to do at making yourself hated, that somebody doesn't pity you being in a wheelchair. When he was stuck trying to get in the house, that was comedic timing for me. I laughed my ass. I'm like, fuck you, Franklin. I hope you never make it into that house.
I love Franklin. I love him so much.
Here's a dog to diffuse the situation, just as a just as a happy medium.
So I 100% agree with the Franklin thing. He's one of the worst characters. I think if you take the raspberries away, it makes them slightly more, but no, I can't. I can understand why he can ruin a movie. But Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a classic. I think we almost all agree on that. And it was just because it was so raw and visceral, like everybody's touched on. It was also something we haven't really seen before. And they say it all the time now, but like, oh, people threw up, people had to leave the theater, blah, blah, blah. I think they probably truly did, because it was something like, even though there's no blood.
Brand new.
So I can't really touch on more than we've already been said. I was going to bring up the X thing because I thought that would be fun. That turned into something for sure.
Oh, it's great. I love that. I love all those movies.
So we'll go around, even any last words, we throw those in and do our rankings. We do it on a 5-star scale. I give it a 4. It's always been between 4 and 5 for me. I think 4 is more than fair. So that's me. What about you, Ben?
What out of what? 1 out of 5?
5, yeah.
5 plus 5. Like it's such a good movie that even people who don't understand it like it, and they don't know why. 5.
TJ?
Yeah, so just the history, I've only given John Carpenter's Halloween a 5, which I consider a pillar of horror cinema. I'm going to break precedents. I'm going to say this is a 5 too, because of what it is and what it means to cinema.
John?
A fucking 0. No, I'm kidding. So this is definitely when I think of the best horror films ever, I think of this, Jaws, Exorcist, and I don't know. I mean, Halloween, there's probably another one in there, but this and Jaws are like neck and neck for me. It's a 5. It's perfect. But like the second one's my favorite, but it's not a perfect film. I just love it. But this is a perfect film. So yeah, 5 out of 5. Absolutely.
All right, Kellen.
The bell curve ruiner. So if I hadn't watched this again, I would have said a 3 only because of its place in horror history. But having watched it again and had been forced to suffer through something that I feel like should have been better than it was, and even considering of the time, the movie that it was, and you can look at movies around the same time that were better. 2.5.
That's not as bad as I was expecting. Yeah,
that's only because of its place in horror history.
That puts it at 4.3
points.
So 4.3. We round that to 4.5. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you might have heard of it. 4.5. Kellen's heard of it for sure. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to wherever you're listening to this podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, on TikTok, join our Facebook group. I think that's all we got right now. Ben, thank you so much for hanging with us. It was a good time.
Oh, it was a pleasure, man. Honestly, like it thoroughly enjoyable. I also just love hearing someone shit on Chainsaw Massacre. It really like
We'll come back weekly for more Kellen takes.
Yeah, right.
It's great. It's so great,
man.
It's so great.
In his defense, he's really only shown like 5 or 6 movies. But all right, signing off. I'm Jay with Ben, John, Kellen, and TJ. And until next time,
keep it spooky. Well, that was fun, guys.
Fun stuff.
Does anybody want to
just so the other guys know, because I know you a little better, Ben, you're not pissed off at Kellen's take, right? You thought that was hilarious.
God, no, I love it. I think it's great. Honestly, 100%. I honestly, like, I think it's fucking awesome that someone could hate this movie. And it's great. I love it. I'm not pissed
and it
off
makes honestly, we started out doing movies that we all liked, and that gets boring after a while, especially
it gets super boring.
Yeah,
it makes for
it definitely gives
radio.
Jay a lot of Instagram fodder.
That's true.
What do you hey Ben, what do you think of the next generation with Matthew McConaughey? Because I actually, in a weird way, I enjoy it, even though it's a piece of shit. I kind of like it. I don't know why.
It's really weird. A weird thing is I probably should have bought that. I worked on 3 Chainsaw Massacre movies. I worked on the 2007 or 2006 reboot.
The beginning.
The Chainsaw Massacre.
Jessica Biel?
Yeah, Jessica
Biel.
That
was 2003.
Jessica Biel, yeah.
I worked on the beginning, and then I worked on Leatherface.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And
I low-key think the 2003 remake is one of the best horror remakes.
It is. I agree.
It's good.
I liked Leatherface. Were you involved with the kid wearing the cow head?
Yeah.
That was the best part of that entire fucking movie.
It was cool.
And how creepy he was.
Although like being like I this is one of those movies where I'm a bit of a like I love it. I like why not remake From Beyond? I want to see someone do a remake of From Beyond or remake They Live. Those two deserve like a good a reimagining. Chainsaw Massacre does not.
Right.
Let me say this real quick to redeem myself a little bit. I will say that Leatherface, both iterations, the chop house or butcher apron face, and then the painted lady, both of those are so iconic.
And they're deeply disturbing.
I mean, they're up there with any other masked
and the crazy
antagonist that you can name.
So the great thing about those masks is they were made by a naive artist. They were not made by someone who understood special effects makeup. Mm-hmm. He was just making shit up.
And I think that works because he's a small-brained person. So if he made his own mask, that's exactly what they would look like.
yeah, it wouldn't be this elaborate thing like in Chainsaw Massacre 2. You can tell that like, well, there's this dude named Mitch Devane who's one of the best sculptors in special effects history. One of his first sculpts, and like you can tell that it's sculpted and it's made, but it still looks great. But the original one looks like a fucking psychopath made it. You know,
and what's interesting too is that he makes noise. Like you don't see a lot of that in masked horror villains. You don't see them. I mean, even though he's grunting and he screams when the chainsaw hits his legs, you don't really see them. I mean, Michael Myers,
although
doesn't really make noise.
Michael does breathe a lot in the first movie. He is a loud ass breather. When you rewatch that movie, every scene he's like,
have you ever wore a mask? That's what it sounds like inside the mask all the time.
You know,
but he's loud, man.
He's asphyxiating under there.
Halloween is one of my least favorite horror movies.
Really?
What? You rotten hell, you piece of shit.
Wow, that's
what is going on? What is happening?
And I'm the asshole.
That's my favorite horror film.
Oh,
that
man.
tone just shifted.
What the hell?
I like it, but I don't like it. It doesn't scare me because I have no tangible, like, that's not how I grew up. I didn't grow up in a neighborhood. I didn't it doesn't fuck with me. Like there's this movie, it's called Lady in the Cage. It's from the 1950s. Lady in the Cage, Sunset Boulevard. Like there are these films that like I got to see a lot of cool shit because I had a family member that was really into film. And like the Halloween doesn't really do it for me. I don't know why. It just doesn't. Never has.
I think it's the mask. When I see that mask, in the first one, it's like you see whatever you're afraid of, and I don't know, something about that mask since I was little has just haunted me. I have one behind me somewhere.
Oh, sure.
And it's like I see that thing sometimes when I walk in here, and I still get scared. Like I'm just.
I think it just moved actually.
Oh yeah, right, yeah.
That's the gun.
Whenever I saw that mask, like whatever you fear, like I saw one of my uncles. You know, it was. Terrifying.
I can't think like the only thing that I can think of horror wise that actually terrified me, and to this day I still jump in the bed if I have the lights off, is the leech lady from Puppet Master 2. The leech lady in that and I was at my grandmother's house and she had an older home and all the beds had plenty of room for whatever monster wanted to live under there to be under there, and there was nothing else. So I used to like literally check under the bed with the lights on to make sure that Drillhead or the leech lady weren't under there waiting for me to fall asleep so that she could climb on my chest and vomit leeches on me. That makes no sense because that's not anywhere birthed in reality. But that still terrifies me, the thought that there's going to be some little monster under the bed. All the way to Pet Cemetery when the kid slits his his Achilles tendon. That's one of the first things in horror I can ever remember feeling when I saw it. Like as soon as it happened, I was like, "Ow!"
The sister in Zelda scared the shit out, or the sister Zelda in Pet Cemetery scared the fuck out of me.
Oh yeah,
like that, like her old twisted spine and like that scared the shit out of me. And it's still like when I watch that movie, it makes me feel uncomfortable, and I'm not for sure why.
And to show you like my ratings are all over the place. One of my absolute favorite horror films of all time is Needful Things.
Oh, I love that film.
I would give that a 4.5, a solid 4.5. I've watched that movie probably 20 times. And Ed Harris's character, the pacing, I just love that film.
And there's never been a physical release of the entire television version, because when they used to show it on TV, they'd show it as like a 3 or 4 hour thing. But every DVD release is like 2 hours.
Yeah, it's okay.
I just love the ending where when you realize that he really is the devil because he climbs out of the burning wreckage of his shop and he throws the handcuffs to Ed Harris's character and he walks off.
There's a film before that called Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Yeah,
Disney movie.
Like Needful Things is a kind of like a homage to Something Wicked.
Yeah, Christopher Lee was in that,
too.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The best evil shop owner movie is definitely Salem's Lot, even though that's not really what it's about.
Oh, yeah.
But Salem's Lot to me is like the pinnacle of that.
It's fucking great. It's fucking great. Like that vampire, like,
oh man.
Took a lot of pages from the original Nosferatu.
So they actually made
I've never seen it, so I'm not going to watch it so that I don't shit on it for y'all.
Well, they keep delaying that remake.
That was dude, I got to tell you, that was so much fun to hear someone shit on Chainsaw Massacre, because I have never heard that before. It's so great. Like,
I just had an idea. There used to be a picture I saw all the time. It's like a pigeon, and he's like, "I will shit on everything you love." I'm gonna Photoshop Kellen's head. Definitely gonna be doing that this weekend.
There you go.
Oh, you like Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Be ashamed if someone shit on it.
Hey, you know what else he hates? He hates Creep Show. He hates fucking Creep Show.
The original, not the
I hate 4 of the 5 shorts. The one with Leslie Nielsen is fantastic.
We can't get into that.
Garbage.
We can't get into that. Has anyone watched the second season of Castle Rock, the show on Hulu? I think it only had 2 seasons, where it took Stephen King novels and meshed them together. It's fantastic.
No, I haven't.
The first one's Misery, or no, I'm sorry, the second one's Misery and Salem's Lot, and they mesh it together, and it's really good.
How do you mesh that together?
Where?
She lives in the town. She lives in Salem's Lot.
Misery's fantastic. Misery's
That's
great.
That ankle scene that gives me the willies every time.
Yeah. Kellen, Lizzie Kaplan is in the second season of that, which is just another reason to watch it. By your face, you don't know who I'm talking about, but you do. Lizzie Chaplin.
Yeah.
But she's fantastic. She was a young Kathy Bates character in the show, and everything's something that's like, "You dirty bird." Like that was just, and me and Lindsay just started calling each other dirty bird for like every possible reason. Like that's like the funnest little thing. Bunch of dirty birds over there.